Injury number 2 is a foramen stenosis. Now, a foramen stenosis, there are 2 types of stenosis. There is the stenosis of the canal, where the spinal cord goes down through, that narrows and irritates. But you've also got the foramen. So that's essentially where the nerves come off the spinal cord and then come out of the spine. They come out of these little holes, and essentially those holes become narrowed. What then happens is that irritates the nerve, and you can get pain when the nerve is irritated. What's causing that? A lot of uncontrolled spine motion, and then what that does, that causes the arthritic changes, so the bone to be added, or the canal to be narrowed of the foramen, or the neural, where the nerve comes out of the spine. That then goes on to, as I've mentioned, that then irritates the spine. How do we then go about rehabilitating that? Well, if the cause is uncontrolled spine motion, so there's just lots of it, that's one of the things we then need to start managing. And with regards to how we can go about opening that gap, this is where traction can be useful. Now, traction is where you've got the 2 discs, the 2 vertebrae, and then you essentially try and create more space and open that gap. Now, with regards to sort of true stenosis, which is what we're talking about, this is the narrowing of the canal. Now, I should mention, if you have a disc that loses height, that can also cause that change, but that's not a stenosis, that's a disc degenerating. So it's a slightly different cause, but you can kind of get the same effect from it, if that makes sense. So what we're talking about is the stenosis, which is where material is laid down to narrow that gap. You've still got the necessary disc height. So how we go about rehabilitating that is, 1, traction can be useful. Now, that's not to say that traction is the answer. It can be helpful method to use. But again, that needs to be tested and assessed to see if that can be used. So we would go about potentially adding traction into a rehab program. What you've also got are extension postures. And the reason for the extension is that can start taking load away from the spine. So along with the traction, as you open the gap, with the extension you start to calm. Now, I'm not talking about full extension. What I'm talking about is just extending the spine so the muscles relax and it takes the compression and the load away from the spine because of the muscle activation. What we've then got are walking intervals, if you will. Now, these are generally short because what the individual may experience are longer walking periods or longer standing periods can irritate and create or cause pain, if you will. So what we do is we basically just minimize that that walk into intervals, into shorter intervals. Now, again, how long the interval is, it would be of a shorter nature, but until that's tested, we won't know what that is. But that's easily tested. You just need to ask the question, when does my pain begin as I walk? And then you can start to break that up into intervals. What we can also do with those intervals is not only make them shorter, but we can walk a little bit faster. What does walking faster do? Is, again, it starts to unload the spine and gets more muscles working, but it also gets the muscles working, as I described, like elastic bands. So you aren't necessarily using your muscles to walk like you lift a weight. What you're doing is you're turning your muscles into elastic bands and you're kind of springing. You have a spring in your step, if you will, and you're starting to bounce along. And that's how that's what walking faster is doing. What that then does, that takes load away from the spine and adds it around the tissues, because more of the tissues are working, and they're working like springs. So they use that load to help propel you forwards. So it's not just a case of you're ambling along. There is a faster nature to the walk. What also then starts to happen is the arm swing starts to come in, which then just adds to that springy nature and bouncing nature to the spine or to the walk, and unloads the tissues. Because what's generally found is that slower walking of longer duration and postures that use flexion, or even exercises that use flexion, they load the spine. And that's something that we want to try and take away, because that's only going to add compression to the spine, which is going to create the environment for improper technique or excess load or unnecessary load on the spine. So those are kind of three things that we need to sort of move away from: longer walking periods, slower walking, and flexion postures. When it comes to exercises, again, we don't want exercises to add lots of load to the spine. So we would use that shorter interval idea as a way of using that within the sets for the exercise. So we don't want to necessarily be doing long duration side planks as an example. We might just split it up into 3 to 10-second blocks. So we're not compressing the spine and then holding that compression there. We're compressing, getting the muscles active, and then we're releasing, getting the muscles active, and then we're releasing. That's then starting to add a nature of stability to those muscles, and that's what we can then start developing. So it would be using an exercise like the side plank in short intervals, bridge to get the glutes working, because the glutes are effective in work when we walk. So we need to get those more active, again, to start taking that load away. We would also use something like the bird dog, because the arms and the leg being lifted will switch the muscles on, and then when we bring them down and change them over, that will alternate. So it will not only create a degree of stability, it will also use that short interval nature to the way that we want our muscles to work. So again, as a quick summary, what is stenosis? Certainly of what we're talking about, the foramen, which is where the narrowing of that canal, where the nerve comes out of the spine. What's causing that? Uncontrolled spine motion. So we need to, when we talk about rehabilitating it, first of all, we need to control that motion. So we need to think about the postures, positions, and the movements that we're in or that we're using, and we need to start controlling them with muscle contraction. With regards to postures, we can use traction, extension can help that because it unloads the spine, and walking is another way of being able to unload the spine, doing it in short duration, doing it of a faster nature, and getting the arms swinging. When we're talking about exercises, we're going to use that short interval nature to our exercises. So we would use side plank, we would use bird dog, we would use bridge to not only stabilize the spine, but access the muscles that help with walking as well. So that is, again, just a general summary overview of some of the things to start thinking about with regards to foramen stenosis.